Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Talk Musicals to Me, a fun theatre podcast about musicals and their impact on people. My name is Caroline Sheen and I'm here to quiz some of the leading creatives in the entertainment industry about their relationship with musical theatre and how certain musicals may have influenced their lives in ways you may not even expect. From how they first encountered a musical to musicals they may never even have seen, let's dive in and introduce today's guest to open up and talk musicals to me. My guest today completes a triumvirate for us. For my regular listeners, you will have already heard Pippa Cleary and Luke Shepherd, and now you finally get the third part of the triangle. You get Jake Brunger, the fantastic lyricist and writer of Jet Set Go, Adrian Mole, The Bake Off, Treasure Island. But he is not only that. He's not only a lyricist and writer. He has written screenplays and plays, and he is just trying his hand at everything and succeeding superbly. And as you know, all these brilliant people are so young and so fabulous. It's so exciting because there's so much ahead for all of them, and we get them at the, I don't know, is it a cusp? I don't know. But where will they go from here? Luke's already got his Olivier Award. Pippa and Jake have had 3 shows on in the West End. It's so exciting. Thank you for coming on Talk Musicals to me today, Jake Brunger.
Thank you.
Am I saying that right? Brunger or Brunger? Or Brunger?
You are, and do you know what? It's Brunger. But what's really funny is that whenever I have a song on the Elaine Page show, she really struggles with my name. She calls me Jake Brunger. And then Christopher Biggins once went on This Morning, and there's a great clip on YouTube of him calling me Jake Bugner. You know, it's a bit like that Idina Menzel, John Travolta, you know, just land for something and you'll get there eventually, basically. Yes, it's a hard G is what I like to say.
Where's it from, that name?
It's actually Dutch.
Oh, okay.
My auntie has traced our family history, and yeah, there's some Dutch. But I should probably look into that, shouldn't I? Maybe when I go on, what's that program on BBC One?
Who do you think you are?
That's when I'll find out. Yeah. Maybe when I get my Olivier like Luke Shepherd, they'll give that to me.
Yes, definitely. Let's put that out there, make that happen. Thank you so much, Jake, for coming on today. We've been trying to do this for so long, haven't we? And I'm sorry it's taken so long. How are you? What's happening with you at the minute?
We're in the middle of a heat wave, as we were just talking about. So it's like a lottery of when you go to the theatre of basically whether it's air conditioned or air cooled.
Yeah.
Last night I went to Southwark Playhouse, the Jonathan Larson project. That is, I think, air conditioned. It was nice. It was nice. So I can recommend that. That's a good one for aircon.
I did notice the previous show that was on there, a lot of their social media was aircon. Come and watch it. We've got aircon.
Oh, yes. Redcliffe. Yeah. Which I also saw, which was absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's a great one to talk about, you know, success of new British work. To be Jordan Lou Gage's first show. It's really brilliant. And Paul Foster, obviously, who I just worked with at Christmas, directing. But yeah, Caroline, I feel like you are the linking bridge between everybody. You and your husband, Mike Gibson, obviously. I feel like you two were actually very instrumental to my early career, which hopefully we'll get to talk about.
Oh, okay.
I know you both came very early on into mine and Pippa's journey, and yeah, we're very grateful to both of you.
Oh, well, we love you all. It's just brilliant. And I'm so thrilled. And what I always feel like when I interviewed Pippa and when I interviewed Luke, I just felt like there's shows out there that I need to go and listen to because you're, you know, a generation below me, younger than me, and you open my eyes to new work, which I think is really useful and very educational, and so it's important, you know.
I remember being 15, and this was the era whereby to listen to new musicals, you still had to buy CDs, either off Dress Circle, or I don't know how, but I think I definitely remember getting some from America. And I remember getting The Last 5 Years, Songs for a New World, The Full Monty, The Producers. Like, you know, this was pre-streaming. This was I guess, YouTube, I suppose.
And when they would be released in America, like a year before they would come over here.
Easily a year.
They'd go to New York and bring it back for us and things.
I mean, I lived in Nottingham, so there was no one going going to New York and picking up CDs for me. It was a case of like, you either spent a lot of money on import taxes or you didn't get them. So yeah, that was kind of how I got introduced to those. And then the first ever time when I was like 17, I bullied my mum into taking me to New York because we had distant relatives there. So the very first Broadway season I saw was like Urinetown, Wicked. I saw the original cast of Wicked when I was about, I mean, God, what was that, 2003? I saw the original production of Avenue Q. I saw the original producers. This was all like I say, when I was like 17, 18, and I stayed with relatives on Long Island. So I was so lucky because, I mean, as we'll talk about, like I was just a musical obsessive. So for that to be the season I grew up in. And now I think those shows are now quarter of a century old. And yeah, I feel like it was yesterday. That makes me feel old.
There was that Tony season, wasn't there? And they did a documentary about it. And I think it might literally be called Broadway. I think Julie Andrews narrates it. And it's about that Tony season of like Wicked and Avenue Q and all these brilliant shows. And you're just like, wow, that was a peak moment for Broadway musicals. It was almost like they'd reclaimed from the British invasion of the 80s and 90s. They'd reclaimed their voice again.
Yeah, I think that was the last sort of, I mean, it sounds so deep history, but that was kind of the last golden age that we've just had. I think that we will be seeing Hairspray and Wicked for the rest of our lives. I can't wait for the Donmar Warehouse production of Wicked, you know, in 50 years, stripped back and her standing on a box.
The chamber Wicked.
Yeah.
It'll happen. You know it will.
I know.
So tell me, Jake, how did you first meet musical theatre?
So I think it was, I mean, bearing in mind that I was a young child in the early 90s, this was like the era of VHS tapes, you know, pre-streaming, pre-anything like that. I think even going to the video shop like might have been a new thing. So we had the VHS tapes of Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, and I must have worn them out. I mean, between the two, I swear, like, you know, like people stick their kids in front of YouTube now. I think my mum just used to stick me in front of Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music when I was being annoying, which was probably all the time.
Julie Andrews basically brought you up.
Yes, but here is the great thing. My mum told me that Mary Poppins and Maria were the same person. And I have such a core early memory of Mary Poppins flying away at the end of the movie and me bursting into tears, running into the downstairs toilet where my mum was on the loo. I don't know if she remembers this. I've not asked her. And me saying, Mummy, Mary's just flown away to become Maria. I mean, how gay is that? Like, if there ever was a moment that we knew, it was that. But yeah, that blew my mind. I didn't understand what that meant. Like, it's so confusing to get your head around.
Yeah, both of them are like in charge of children. They're both sort of, you know, a governess, a nanny. And they're both Julie Andrews, and they both sing like an angel.
I don't think that I ever connected that it was the same. I must have been 3 or 4. So like, I really didn't understand what that meant.
Well, she looks very different, doesn't she?
She does. Yeah. The haircut, you're completely different. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the era where like really you only had like, I don't know, 10 or 12 videos. So there was a lot of Disney movies in there as well. Again, these must have been like just coming out, like Aladdin. I remember we had like when I was a bit older, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. But there was a whole gap in my Disney knowledge. Like we never had the video of The Little Mermaid. So there's lots of films that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Even now. So like I've never seen The Little Mermaid animation, which is terrible. I'm embarrassed to say that.
I remember that era. I mean, that thing of watching videos, that was a commitment as well. Because, you know, you couldn't skip between anything. You could fast forward, but that would take a while. You know, nowadays you just press a button and skip 10 seconds forwards or whatever. It was tangible, wasn't it? It was almost kind of archaic now, I guess, to think about.
Yeah, and I think my mum also used to have in her car, my parents were big musical theatre fans, which I guess is where it came from. But my mum would have the cassettes in her car to The Complete Miss Saigon and Blood Brothers. But again, this is like you can't skip between the tracks once you're playing from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I suppose I've never actually given this any thought, but from a deeper level, I guess that structure of listening to musicals was always from start to end, or like you turn it over for act 2. It's interesting to put that together actually, because nowadays you would just skip to the highlights. You know, you'd skip to Tell Me It's Not True.
Yeah, you just skip to the best bit.
Yeah. So I think that actually, I guess in a way, from having to watch those things from start to finish and having to listen to the cassettes on the way to school, but it meant that I knew like every word to Blood Brothers when I was like 7 or 8. And Miss Saigon, I saw Miss Saigon the very final Drury Lane. It closed, I can't remember what year, but I think I was 12 or 13, and I went with my nan who lived in London. My mum always used to send me at half terms, you know, to go and see theatre with my nan. And I remember in the interval saying to her, she was like, "Are you enjoying it?" I said, "Yeah, I've just got a question. What's a brothel?" To my like 80-year-old nan.
And how did she respond to that?
Honestly, she said it's where the prostitutes go to sell sex. Yeah, so it's weird that I'd listened to the cassette, never really grasped like what it was actually about. And then, yeah, I remember seeing that final. I was so lucky to see that final Drury Lane production. but very inappropriate to take a 12/13-year-old too.
I don't know about you, but I watched that documentary of it over and over and over again. Was that anything that was on your radar?
Caroline, the documentary that I wore out was the Witches of Eastwick making of with you. It was hosted by, was it Mary Nightingale? And I think it's on YouTube now. But yeah, I mean, I recorded that off the TV. So I guess that's my era, the making of the Witches of Eastwick, which also Drury Lane. There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Do you know what the first musical you ever saw was? Like actually in a theatre?
Yeah, it was The Sound of Music. I think because I loved that at VHS so much, they took me to see it at Birmingham Alexandra. Christopher Cazenove was playing Captain Von Trapp. I've tried to Google it since and I can't really find much out about it. I'd love to know who else was in it. But I remember so vividly, all I can remember is her coming forward on the island. And that's it. That is the only memory I have of it. But I mean, the fact that they took me to see it, I must have been such a mega fan.
Was it Petula Clark?
I don't know. I should go on a deep dive of that. But I don't think it was, because I think I would have remembered, if I'd have Googled it, I would have remembered. But I can't remember who else it was. But she played it older, didn't she?
Yeah, she did play it when she was quite a lot older. And I think Summer Strallen was one of the Von Trapps in that as a child, in that tour. Do you know why I remember this? Because I used to put all like the flyers for things on my wall.
Same, yeah.
And there was a flyer for Christopher Cazenove and Petula Clark at that point. Maybe she'd left by then, but I can literally still picture it.
Yeah, and then I think I definitely remember seeing Cats at the New London Theatre. And I remember, again, all I can remember is that I squinted because one of the characters, the one who's in the neon pink, I was so interested because they had the ultraviolet light, so it made the neon pink, glow. And I remember squinting to be like, how have they done that? Like, couldn't get my head around why she was glowing. It's so funny, those really, really small core memories. And then obviously I'm from Nottingham, so the Nottingham Playhouse pantomimes, I went every Christmas, and Kenneth Alan Taylor is still to this day a career hero. He was the writer, the director and the star of those pantos. And I used to come home, go to my mum's typewriter and write my own pantomime. And then I sent it to Kenneth Alan Taylor when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was like, hello, I've seen your pantomimes. Here is my own script. And he wrote back like a handwritten letter that gave me feedback on my script. And with criticism.
Wow.
Which is an amazingly bold thing to do. I can't imagine how many kids sent in pantomimes. So I think that writing instinct was always in me. Like I would come back and like rush to the typewriter and want to write my own version.
That's so interesting, because I would come back and sing and dance and try and act it all out in my bedroom.
Of course, yeah.
So that was straight away. You watched a show and you wanted to write one like it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That was where your desire was.
Yeah, and my dad built me and my sister a puppet theatre, and I had the magical theatre, which was like an old toy that had like magnets under the stage so you could move the performers around.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't interested in performing that much. I did amateur theatre in Nottingham. I was never Oliver. I was always in the gang. I was in Scrooge, but I was always like one of the Cratchit siblings. I did play Adrian Mole. That's sort of how I came to meet that show.
Oh, in the other play?
Yeah.
I played Grandma in that.
Oh, gosh. Careful what you wish for, Caroline. Yeah, you're coming into the casting bracket.
It's not far away, let's face it.
Yeah, that was at the Lace Market Theatre in Nottingham, where I went to the youth theatre every Saturday. So Adrian Mole was, I think just because I was Adrian Mole, I was that anal, annoying, nerdy kid, but musical theatre was my obsession. And actually, Adrian sends letters to the BBC with his poems. And again, I used to send scripts to the BBC. And I remember when you get the envelope that said like BBC and the post stamp being London, I was like, oh my gosh, the BBC. And I used to enter, creative writing competitions and all that. And I remember when I was like in year 8 or 9, I put on a production of Roald Dahl's Boy in my school library. So it was always there that I'd written and I'd directed, but I wasn't in it. It wasn't like me. I just found it more interesting.
It was your work.
Yeah.
Your parents were big musical theatre fans. Were they involved in the Amdram as well? Because Nottingham is quite a good hub for theatre, isn't it?
Incredible. I was so lucky.
There's a generation kind of my age, really, like Rosalie Craig, Adam Penford, Pete Caulfield,
James Graham.
They all know each other from Nottingham and they did theatre there, and they're still all really tight friends. Do you remember, were they the ones you sort of watched go on ahead of you? Was that something you were aware of?
No, because again, we didn't have social media back then. So we wouldn't have known any of those people. My direct peer group was Vicky McClure. So Vicky and I were in youth theatre. We are about 5 years apart. We played Danny and Sandy in like half-term workshop, and which is so inappropriate. I think I was the only boy, which is why I got Danny by like...
You got the lead role, yeah.
And then Vicky and I have tried to work together a couple of times in adulthood, actually. I wrote a film for her in 2018 that nearly happened with Reese Ifans, and it didn't happen. And then she was supposed to be in my Christmas film that just came out. She was supposed to be the lead in that, but it clashed with another project. So I hope one day that comes off. I'd love her to do a musical. I mean, she obviously can sing. because she did youth theatre in Nottingham all the time.
She's got those choirs, hasn't she? The dementia choirs.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
We have to get on to my second question, which we may have already sort of touched on. What was your first experience of theatre, like personally, like getting involved in theatre? Would that have been the Amdram or the writing?
Yeah, definitely. Nottingham Theatre Royal, which is obviously, as you know, is a major touring theatre where all of the musicals come to. The first thing I ever did there was the gang show. Do you know what a gang show is?
Is that something to do with the Scouts?
Yeah. It's interesting. People don't talk about it much, but my whole family are from Scouting. In fact, my uncle, who's in his late 70s, still runs a Scout troupe in London. And Hayden Gwynn's children were in his Scout group, like growing up.
Wow.
And when Bake Off was on in the West End, and obviously, Hayden so sadly passed away after the run, but Hayden took my uncle on a backstage tour of Bake Off because, she'd remembered that he'd been their sort of Scout leader. But yes, anyway, the gang show is a thing where it's like a variety show and it's of like compilations. It's like different medleys that like some of them are musicals, some of them are pop songs. So that was the first time I did a show at Nottingham Theatre Royal. And then I did the Operatic Society shows there. But for me, it was just amazing to be in my local theatre where I went to see the musicals. I guess that's like a kid who plays football getting to play at like Wembley Stadium. To be backstage and see the dressing rooms, I was just fascinated and felt this is amazing. And then the touring production of Inspector Calls came and they looked for local people to be the supernumeraries. And I did that as well.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like the set collapses. Sorry, spoiler alert for anyone who's not seen it, but you're on the stage for that moment. And so, but it's weird. I never felt, I did, like I say, the performing aspiration was never for me. It was always me like looking at that with like an outside critical observer, like I want to do this. And I guess, like I say, writing was just always there.
If any of you get a chance to see this production of An Inspector Calls, like I say, it's been going forever. Directed by Stephen Daldry, I believe.
Yeah.
A brilliant Victorian drama. How they've done it is absolutely brilliant. And the effect it has on you, like I say, it just stays with you forever. That's so cool that you got to do that.
Yeah, I loved it. And again, I've not thought about this stuff until you've asked me. It's interesting how all the clues were there growing up.
Yeah. I also think it's really special, like you say, that you got to do your amateur theatre on the stage of the professional theatre.
Yeah.
I never experienced that growing up. Where I grew up, the amateur theatre had its own space. And it's incredible, actually. There's this one theatre in Newport that the actual Playgoers Society owns it. It's their building. Mm-hmm. And it's historically going to always be their building. So to then go and see something in the theatre that is professional on the stage where you've been, that must make you feel really that this is achievable, this is attainable, because you've been on that stage as well.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Like I say, it's like, yeah, it's like cosplaying at the highest level, like the thing that you want to do and the thing you're going to see. At the moment, it's interesting because the Great British Bake Off is getting loads of amateur productions at the moment. And so Pippa and I, we try and go to, like, not as many as we can, but like, if there's one nearby, like there's one near my dad, there's one near Pippa's mum. So like we'll tie it in with trips. It went to Aberdeen His Majesty's, which is like one of the biggest touring venues, like, the local theatre, they put on their shows there. And we've also seen it in like village halls. But it's so interesting that like when we meet the casts afterwards and they're always so amazed to meet us. And I'm like, we're just Jake and Pippa. This is so weird because we're not in any way famous. But I guess it's like the equivalent of like Styles and Drew coming to, because, if you do honk in school and then like being like, oh my God, Styles and Drew are here. So I sometimes remember that and I'm like, this is nuts that it's now. I'm so glad that the show is having a big amateur life because having started there, I think it is so important. And I love amateur theatre and we get messages all the time for people like asking questions. I'm always like, ask me more. Like I want to get involved. I'm really happy to do that.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Jake, what is the musical that you have seen the most often?
It's definitely The Witches of Eastwick. And this is where my sort of Caroline Sheen fandom came from. Was it 2001 it came out? So again, I would have been, 15.
2001.
And that was the age where I would be allowed to go on the train by myself to see my nan and go to stay with her. She lived near Wembley Stadium. And so I saw the original West End production 5 times.
Was that at
both
Drury Lane?
And Prince of Wales. I saw every Darrell Van Horn, including Earl Carpenter, when he did the brief stint between Clark Peters. And then I saw the Nikolai Foster tour. And then I saw Rosie Ash reprise the role of Felicia at the Watermill Theatre, which was near my mum's house. So I had to go and see that production. And then I went to Sweden in 2019 to see Rachel Kavanagh's production in Swedish.
With Peter?
Yes, Peter Joback playing Darrell Van Horn. Yeah.
Wow, you saw that. I heard it was fabulous.
It was amazing. My neighbour, Tim Lutkin, who lives on the floor above me in my building, he did the lighting for it. And he was like, and I was like, oh my God, I love The Witches of Eastwick. He was like, do you want my press night tickets? I was like, I literally booked a Ryanair the next day and got myself over there to see it. I didn't know Rachel Kavanagh then at all. I met her, obviously I was like, oh, hello, like I'm Jake. Obviously she went on to direct Bake Off, but that was the first time I ever met her. And I sat next to Dana P. Rowe at the opening night, and I just absolutely let rip and was like, Witches of Eastwick is one of the reasons I'm a writer. You know, it was the formative show for me growing up. I think it's an incredible show. I can't believe it's not been to Broadway. I find it, I stagger. I know it's been to the Signature, but it is the perfect Broadway show. Like, why has Hugh Jackman not played Daryl Van Horn on Broadway? It's waiting to happen.
You're right, you know. I mean, I'm obviously so super close to it that I can't see the woods for the trees sometimes. And it is that show, like every iteration you've talked about that you've seen, you will have seen even the 5 versions of it that you saw at Drury Lane and the Prince of Wales. Prince of Wales, yeah. Pretty much every show will have changed slightly because they were tinkering with it all the time. And so, you know, the duet I had as Jennifer with Peter Yobach as Michael, that changed. That was in Act 1 at one point, it was in Act 2 at one point, and it was broken down, and it became like a smaller version. It still changes all the time.
Yeah, I've seen an amateur production of it as well, and I think drama schools do it as well. But yeah, and I wonder if that's just because with musicals, I suppose that, I mean, you can tinker with them. Every time there is a new production, you always want to do revisions to it, especially with like the success of Death Becomes Her on Broadway. I just think it's the perfect time for it. It's a feel-good show. It's about witches. It's like we're in that classic romantasy place at the moment.
Yeah,
it's got 3 incredible roles for Megan Hilty, and someone should call Christopher. Is his name Gatelli? Is that how you say his surname?
Yes, and tell him about it.
He should do it. Yeah, I think it's a great show, and just it's got everything. It's got effects. I think it's an amazing score. Dirty Laundry is an amazing dance number. So yeah, that was the show I've seen the most, and just the one that really propelled me into, oh, I want to do this as a career. Like that was the moment I was like, it touches the heartstrings, but it's also funny. It's got a bit of everything, and I think that style of writing is what I hope to do in my work now.
Yeah. Did we ever meet? Did you ever do stage door or anything?
I did stage door. I don't think we did, but I do remember coming to one at the Prince of Wales where Darren Carnell had just done his first show as Michael, and at the stage door, of which there was only about 5 of us there, it's niche, and his parents were at the stage door, and I remember being like, him coming out and then being like, he was about 18 at the time.
Yeah, he was really young.
But I mean, Rosemary Ash, who went on to originate Adrian Mole and Bake Off, I used to travel to see productions that Rosie was in. That recording of Evil is a masterpiece. I mean, every gay guy of my age, like with 5 years either side of us, like that is like our anthem. I've got a WhatsApp group with some friends that is like it's Rosie Ash as Felicia, called the Bitches of Eastwick. Yeah, and so the fact that we've gone on to be, great personal friends as well, and that she's originated 2 roles in my shows, I still am awestruck. And even with you, Caroline, it's like that is the show for me. Like, it was Miss Saigon for you that really was that thing. Yeah.
Well, in that documentary that you say you watched all the time, you'll have seen, if I remember rightly, Rosie singing that song on the first day, and we all like clap for her because she performed that full out on the first day of rehearsals when we were just doing a kind of read through of it. And obviously she must have done it to audition.
Yeah.
And it just got sort of bigger and better from there. But it was always like the highlight of the show was Rosie doing that and then meeting her miserable end at the end of it. Such a great number. Maybe
we can wish that into existence. I just, wishing that Broadway, that sort of, when you play like Football Fantasy League, this is the equivalent of like going, musical fantasy league. It would be that, I think.
So who would you cast? You've got Megan Hilty. Who else would you put in there? Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, so many people. I mean, you could have Joy Woods as Suki. That would be a fun one.
Yes. Oh my gosh. She'd be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, so many people.
There's a lot of perfect people for those roles, isn't there?
Yeah, Jennifer Simard, obviously.
Be good Alex, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question is, which musical has made you laugh the most and which musical has made you cry the most?
For the funniest is tied between The Producers and Avenue Q. Again, because I think that it was, like I say, at that really key era that I first went to see Broadway, I sat in the literally top of both of them in the upper circle. They are just gold standard musical comedy writing. And what I think particularly why they stick in the mind for me is because the cast recordings have loads of the dialogue. Avenue Q has got full scenes. And so also, again, as a book writer, I really love that they've preserved so much about how you move into a song. Pippa and I talk about this all the time, especially when we teach. We talk about that moment, that dialogue. Pippa starts underscoring, and then the moment you start singing, especially in musical comedy, it's great to hear that, because cast recordings so often cut out big chunks of scenes just because you want them to be really satisfying songs. And whenever Pippa and I do albums, I'm always like torn between, I want to leave the dialogue in because it's so important. It's part of the mechanics of a song, but you also want to make it a really fun listen. You want the song to live on its own. But certainly, yeah, Avenue Q and producers are just brilliant, foolproof. I mean, I saw the revival of both of those shows that are in the West End at the moment, and just really makes me go, yeah, these are perfectly written shows. And yeah, just the songwriting of those songs is, they're brilliant punchlines. And again, both of those shows have such heart. The producers is a buddy friendship. It's not about romance. Avenue Q is about friendship, of course, romance too. But yeah, those are the ones I go to laugh. And then in terms of crying, I don't think there's any one show that I'm like, people often say, oh, I wept through the whole thing. I don't really subscribe to that when I go and see stuff. But there are always, like, I remember very specific moments, like we talked about the end of Miss Saigon when Chris pulls the curtain. We shouldn't give it away in case anyone doesn't know.
Spoilers.
It's a breathtaking moment where you just, catches your breath. I even saw the Waitress tour recently with Carrie Hope Fletcher, and the very end, again, I don't want to give away the plot, but before it goes into the final scene when she basically makes the key decision that she's going to do, I just couldn't believe how it choked me, seeing it again. Oh, there's lots of moments like that. The end of Blood Brothers again. Everything I'm going to say is like spoilers. It's like, I don't want to give away what happens at the end. The end of Fame, when Shlomo dedicates Bring On Tomorrow to, again, the person who has passed away. Isn't it funny? They're all in the same point. Everything I'm talking about is always 5 minutes before the end.
Yeah, it's like 11 o'clock kind of.
Just after that, yeah. And then Billy Elliot, the moment where they go back to the pit and they go down and in the a cappella singing. I've got tingles just talking about it.
Yeah, me too. I just got all goosebumps.
Yeah. It's those moments. I don't love sort of sob fests, if that makes sense. Like, these shows earn those moments, because most of what I've just talked about, they're actually very comedic, lots of those shows. So when you get to that final sob moment, it's because you have really invested in the heart and humor of those characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it really interesting what you said about the dialogue, and sort of going back to what you said about the dialogue and being on the CDs. And like you say, for you as a writer, that's wonderful to have that. Yeah, that's a really important move in recordings, and one that I think I hadn't appreciated until you just said that. When you're then writing, how do you then assess whether what you're writing is doing that to people? Are you in the audience watching, or how do you gauge that?
When Pippa and I write, we give it full-on performance when we are writing, and we will do it at the energy level. And this is a big name drop, but really, really early on in our careers, we were commissioned to write a musical that Thea Sharrock directed the workshop on. Sadly, it never came to anything. This was when Thea was really in the peak of her, like, Equus era. When we would send stuff to Thea, she said, I learn more about these songs from seeing you two perform them, because how we perform them is obviously the intention behind it. And I think that in Bake Off particularly, there are two really emotive songs, Grow and My Dad, which, actually, speaking of crying, I used to really relish in seeing people, don't like watching during previews, like seeing people cry, like grown men cry. But no, I think that for Pippa and I, we are just people who feel big emotions all the time. We're natural criers. We're naturally, like, real heart on our sleeve people. So I think that, like I say, our characters are always warm and humorous. And so we know just when to get to that moment that we know is emotional and then slightly pull back from it. And I think that it's not really something you can teach. I guess it's just that, like, we are those people. We are naturally emotional people, and it comes from us. Because I suppose we write about normal people. Adrian Mole is about normal people. Bake Off is about normal people, ordinary people. And it's about the little incidences of life rather than the sort of the big stuff.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's such a fine line between what you're talking about and then sentimentality. And sometimes I think an audience can feel manipulated into feeling emotional, and then it comes off as inauthentic. I can imagine it must be a very difficult thing.
Yeah, and as a writer, when I go and see other things that I feel are manipulating, I get a bit like, oh, come on. I think because Pippa and I, our process is very much that we scap and improvise a lot in the room together, and we record all our sessions on iPhone. So sometimes those emotional moments come out of just a real moment in the room. I will never write a piece being like, and now I need to hit that emotional beat. It will just come because it's been a natural moment for the character, I think.
And was that something you had from the start? Because I was listening back to my episode with Pippa, and she was saying you were all at university together, weren't you? Pippa Cleary, Luke Shepherd, Jake Brunger, all at university together. You and Luke were in the same year, and Pippa was a year below?
She was in halls of residence with Luke, yeah.
Right. And she was saying that Luke introduced you.
Yes.
And the first time that you did something together, neither of you were particularly enthusiastic about each other.
It was chaotic. We were so polite to each other, and I just thought, how is this going to work? And then the second time we met up, we had such a deadline. We had to write a show for Edinburgh Festival that we just started sort of like shouting, and whoever's line won. We've actually really calmed. Our process has changed in the last couple of years, where we've calmed down a lot. It's too emotional. We can't be like shouting at each other to get lines. But no, it was like playing top trumps. It's like whose line is funny.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, we will argue over like if there's a really good line that people like, like the strawberry jam. There's a really iconic line about strawberry jam and Bake Off that people seem to love, and we'll both claim it as our own. Like,
but it's yours, right?
Always mine. Correct. Thank you.
Sometimes a deadline is the thing you need to actually, I remember doing it GCSEs and A levels. You've got a deadline, you have to write something. And I think sometimes that's what makes me work better, is I'll leave everything to the last minute and then go, oh, okay, here we go. And it's that pressure that really helps creativity. And was that Jet Set Go for Edinburgh?
Jet Set Go was our first show at Edinburgh Festival, yeah. But what you're saying about, the time pressure of like deadlines, of course, every writer works best under a deadline. But the weird thing about musical theatre writing is that it takes so long. So Pippa and I, we actually work in 4-hour sessions now, because like that's our like burnout point. We can be really creative for 4 hours and then it's like exhausting. But you have to keep that like energy in that session so that the energy is translated to the song. But when you go into musical theatre development, that takes years. I mean, you're looking 3 to 5 years mostly for a musical, pretty much. It's hard to maintain that momentum in the process of workshops and readings and all of that and rehearsals. So I think it's really important to always cling on to the fact that when Pippa and I are together and we are presenting that work, every rehearsal show when we do the first day read through, Pippa and I will sing the songs, if people don't know them, to the company. And that is like the last time that we transfer that energy of like, this is the intention behind this song. Now it's up to you to go and take that and run with it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'd love to be there. I need to do something with you guys. I want
I
want to get involved.
We hope so.
Yeah. So my last question for this first act of Talk Musicals to Me, I have never seen a professional production of West Side Story. I believe that is soon to be remedied. Rumour has it that it's coming back to London.
Hopefully, yeah.
But is there a show out there that you regret that you haven't seen so far?
I think like back in my 20s, when I first moved to London, I used to see absolutely everything. Like, I would be at the theatre 4 times a week, 5 times a week. I just was that person who went to see every Fringe show. And I used to stand £5 Don Mar tickets, all of that stuff. I think what's great about getting older is actually that like it's easier nowadays to be like, do you know what? Things play limited seasons. I'm really sorry I didn't see it. Like, just because you can't see everything. And I think it's been really nice to relax and just go, oh, do you know what? Like, I'm not going to see that because I just don't have the money or just don't have the time or whatever. So I've got less regrets now, like Edith Piaf, sort of as time gone on. Like, you can't see everything. But obviously I'm still a musical, wonk. So I want to see everything, of course. I didn't see Six until 18 months ago. I mean, because it was so hard to get into, it was always sold out. And every time I looked, it would be like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to plan for 6 months or what I'll be doing. But everyone told me, they were like, if you've listened to the album of Six, which of course I know inside out, it's just a concert of songs. And I was like, oh, okay. And then finally I managed to get a ticket. My friend Gabby was in it, so she sorted me a seat. And it's the most incredibly structured book musical.
It is. I think people give it quite a hard time.
I literally messaged Toby Marlowe afterwards being like, everyone told me there was no script in Six. I was like, what are they talking about? It has got the best line from a musical of all time, which is they say, hi, you might remember us from your GCSEs. And I just think that line, it's the best line from a musical because it's so true. It immediately it says, this is the context in which you are seeing history. So yes, I didn't think I needed to see Six because I knew it so well. I'd seen clips of it. And I didn't know it at all. So I'm so glad. And then the other one, of course, at the moment, I haven't yet seen Paddington. Very embarrassed. I sang at Luke Shepherd's wedding. I absolutely should have gone. I just didn't get my ass in gear to get a ticket. And now I'm burying my head about it. I fully hold up my hands.
I mean, I don't think it's been on for a year yet, so I think you can cut yourself some slack. But you want to see the original cast, right?
Well, also just everyone is talking about it. And I think that's the thing where I say, like, nowadays, when everyone's talking about something, it's okay to say, oh, do you know what? I haven't seen it. There's a real FOMO in the industry of people being like, we run as an industry on fear of missing out. And it's okay to miss out sometimes, I guess is the thing to say. You can't see everything. I think I've learned that to my peril.
Let's take a break, Jake, and that rhymes. Maybe I could be a lyricist and come back in a few minutes. So, on Talk Musicals to Me, I thought I would use this opportunity to support some friends of mine who have small businesses. And I put a message out on my social media to see who would get in touch and to see how I can help them amplify their voices. So, I have a couple of ones that I would like to mention today. So this one is from my friend John Chartres, who runs a small business specialising in accounting for the arts, self-employed actors, musicians and stage management, as well as small production companies. Friendly advice and good value for anyone who wants to get in touch at fresheyesfinance.co.uk. And this is from a dear mummy pal of mine called Lucy McCrudden, who runs a non-profit called Dance Mama, which is dedicated to supporting parents who dance on and off stage. With evidence-based information and support, plus over 80-plus stories, we help parents continue their careers in dance from a physical, mental, creative and logistical viewpoint. Check out www.dancemama.org to see how they can help you navigate your career as a parent. And finally, Jessica runs something that sounds like great fun, a thing called Showtime Circus, which can be found at Showtime_circus on Instagram. It's a circus school franchise and helps other small business owners franchise or license their business. It's based in Birmingham, but I think there's lots of them around the country. So get online and have a look if you want to learn some circus skills. And welcome back to the second part of Talk Musicals to Me today with the wonderful Jake Brunger. Not just a lyricist, book writer, but also screenwriter. How's that been with regards to because clearly you love your musicals. When you're doing screen work and straight plays, do you miss the musical theatre world or is it quite a refreshing break?
No, it really is a refreshing break, genuinely. It's such a different, I mean, even plays and screenplays, they're so different. The craft, even what I write them on is different. I write plays on Word, I write musicals on Word, and I write, obviously, film and TV on Final Draft. Films are all about structure, so you really have to use your structural thing. But also, I'm often hired for the film stuff because I write good dialogue, so it's like and you're sort of mixing, matching. Both of the films I've done, actually, I wasn't the original writer of. Film has a really weird system whereby several people can work on a project and they just keep going until they get the right script. So you have to be very unprecious. You have to have no ego. I've actually just been taken over on something else that I wrote the first draft of and someone else has taken over from me. And of course you get paid for your contribution, whatever that might be. But yeah, it's a crazy world. I'm glad that I only have one foot in it. I'm so glad that I can come back to musical theatre. I think writer friends of mine who are only in film and TV, it can be a really very weird cutthroat world. I'm glad that I can dip in and out and kind of go, oh, I like doing this, but it's nice to return to the musicals. But I do love the screen stuff as well. It's just me. It's rather than having Pippa or you don't have a director and a choreographer. And what I find crazy in film development is you don't do read-throughs. We workshop stuff all the time in the musical world. But in screenplays, I met Celia Imrie 5 days before my film started shooting for the read-through, 5 days before it started. And I listened to it, I was like, there's so much I want to change. You hear the actors say it, the people who are going to be in it. So I wish that every time I work on new stuff, I'm always like, please, can we do a table read as part of this process? And it's just a bit of an alien language to that world.
It's mad, isn't it? Because you very rarely get the sort of table read stuff. It definitely in enough of advance to make any changes. And also you don't get rehearsal.
Yeah, just shoot and go. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? Because when you're theatre people, you are so used to having a lovely sort of gear up into your performance of weeks and weeks of getting to know people and getting to know your character and rehearsing and playing. And then in film and television, you just turn up and do it.
Yeah. And yet the writing takes so long because, I've got a couple of really lovely things in development for TV. And we've gone through so many drafts because what happens in TV is that shows come out during the time you develop them that are similar or something that you've thought is, and so we've been usurped twice in the 18 months that I've been doing it by two very similar shows coming out. So we've then had to be okay, that bit's gone. Like, we had to reset it some one of it in a completely different part of the world, even because it
Suddenly
was.
you're like on the moon instead of in Scarborough or
Yeah,
something.
literally. You can see why it happens. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's fascinating. It's a long, long, long process.
But so is musicals. I think that like the only thing that I find really tricky as a writer, even now it's hard to get your head around, is just the length of time stuff takes. Because I work very instinctively and very, very quick because, like I say, I like to give it that energy so that I will write a draft and it will pour out of me. And then you might be 6 months before you then get the table read of it. And by that point, I've been like, oh, I can't even remember like, it's like even what those characters were called.
What's the quickest thing you've done? Would it have been Jet Set Go? Would that be the quickest thing you've written?
Yeah, I guess Jet Set Go which is our first show Pippa and I did in our final year of university, where we wrote it, I guess, in February, March, and it opened in the August. We've also done a lot of shows in Singapore with Kate Gollage directing for Singapore Repertory Theatre. We took over from the Styles and Drew slot, which was the sort of 3 shows for young people that they did, Billy Goat's Gruff and Three Little Pigs.
Yes.
We did Red Riding Hood. We did a Treasure Island, which was the precursor to the one that we did at Bristol Old Vic last year. And we did Chicken Little, which is actually opens Saturday for a 6-week run in Singapore. It's coming back. It's a revival, which is really nice.
I think I've literally just seen something about that on Instagram.
But I think we just put a story up. But with the original workshop here was at the other palace, and Callum Scott Howes played one of the chickens.
Whatever happened to him?
Exactly.
Because you wrote a show that he did at the NYMT, right?
Yeah, that's how we first met Callum. Yes, that was Prodigy. And your husband, Mike, was very instrumental in that because Mike, I think, was a board member of NYMT or something like that. And or he was, because he's got such a long history with that company.
Yeah, he's an alumni, yeah.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't even an interview. We went in for a meeting with Jeremy Walker, the producer, and we thought we were just going to be like, hi, we're Jake and Pippa. We like to write a musical for you one day. But we walked out and with a commissioned show, and he said that he'd called Mike and Mike had said good things about us and that he really rated us.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he gave us the sort of blanket commission just to be like, yeah, go on. Mike said you're good. I trust you. And that had come about obviously because you had sung our Welsh Valley song from Jet Set Go, which again, we were so starstruck by at the time because we were 21, when we wrote that show. And so to move to London, we literally moved to London after university, and you sang it on Battersea Barge. And there is a flawless video of that. I don't know who took that video. If you go and Google Caroline Sheen Valley song, it's like we've added a laughter reel to that track.
I think it's actually my video. It's my own, I think.
It's a perfect performance of that song. You remember the really key steps, but for you, for like Witches of Eastwick's Caroline Sheen to sing this little song that we wrote at Bristol University in a practice room. So both you and Mike are really instrumental in that steps to us really forging a professional career.
Well, that goes back to Mike as well, really, because I think when I was out in the States was when Jet Set Go was on in London, because you did it somewhere in London. Am I right? It wasn't just Edinburgh.
It was a German street. Yeah. For 4 weeks with Mark Evans.
I got a phone call from Mike, or a Skype call as it was back in those days. Saying he'd been to see it and there was this amazing song in it that was sung in a Welsh accent, and it was about being from the valleys. And being a Welsh person, there's not a huge amount of musical theatre about being Welsh and the Welsh experience. Not that I don't know this is particularly specific to the Welsh experience, but there's not much you can do. I've done one show where I put a Welsh accent on, but that was funny thing happened on the way to the forum. And, it's not meant to be in a Welsh accent. I just made my character Welsh. So to have a Welsh character in a musical, Mike was like, oh my God, I wish you could come and see this, but there's this one song, I'm going to try and get it for you. And I think that's where we made sort of contact via email.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
Sent me the song, and there was a demo of it, and I was like, I have to sing this song. It's absolutely brilliant. It's called A Simple Valley Song. So if you look it up on YouTube, you will find it. I've actually ended up singing it in actual Welsh as well. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I remember.
But somebody had found it and asked me to sing it on S4C, which is the Welsh speaking channel, and on one of their kind of concert programs called Nos on Lawen. And in that, people go on and they sing I Dreamed a Dream in Welsh, or lots of these musical theatre standards, but translated into Welsh. So we had to get that song translated into Welsh.
And all the swearing and all the rude bits taken out.
All the swearing.
Which is, hard.
Yeah, some of the rude bits had to go, which meant, not much of the song was left.
I was going to say, I've never seen the performance actually, but what's nice about that song is that any girl from Wales who's in their final year of drama school somehow finds the Welsh song. We actually only started selling the sheet music about 2-3 years ago on Music Notes, because up until then we just kept giving it away. People would be like, oh, delighted. And then suddenly we're like, well, I think we should be selling this. So we do now sell it. Because we used to get like a request like every couple of weeks.
Wow.
And we always just used to send it out. It's easier than getting it hosted. But
last time I sang it, I was singing singing for my auntie and uncle. It was their Diamond Jubilee, and it was a huge like room full of very different people, lots of family, lots of friends, lots of people from the choir and people from the council and people who they'd known all the way through their lives. And I sang a couple of songs. I sang Don't Rain on My Parade and Diamonds Are Forever, because it was the Diamond Jubilee. And then my auntie came up to me and she said, Caroline, will you sing the Welsh song? And I was like, I'm not sure this is the audience for the Welsh song. She went, oh no, they'll love it. So I sang it a cappella.
Oh my God.
And they were in absolute hysterics.
That's great.
Because it's a very, very funny song. And for a room full of people,
Welsh,
a lot of whom are from the valleys, it was really good. So, and that's because of your hilarious lyrics and all the happily rhyming names that sound very good in a Welsh accent, like Barry,
Danny,
and
Gary.
I'm not going to give it all away. Gary and Barry and Danny. And so, yeah, brilliant. Sorry, we need to crack on with my questions. What musical would you put on a school curriculum?
I mean, obviously Blood Brothers is already on the curriculum and has been for my entire adult life, my entire existence. For me, I think rather than one specific show, I actually was thinking about the fact that I learn history through musicals.
Yeah.
Evita, whether it's an out and out biopic of a person like Evita, or something like Billy Elliot, that captures the period and what it was like in that time. Or, that's about political history. There's London Road, obviously, at the National. So I really like it when musicals are about real things that have happened, because I'm not a history buff. I dropped history in year 9 because I didn't have to do it for GCSE. So very often I will go and see a musical, or biopics as well. It's where you learn the history of like an artist, or there's lots of jukebox musicals that are about people's careers. And I then think there's a responsibility that musical theatre has to tell those stories accurately. I think certainly in Hollywood movies, I really don't like it when they take huge liberties with like timelines or history or this. I think there's a responsibility there as adapters, as writers, to tell that story properly. So rather than there being one thing on the curriculum, I think it's more that I think if I was running a history department, I would want to take my kids to see something that, like Evita, that, is giving you a real slice of that history in musical theatre form.
I wonder, speaking about you gave up history in year 9, I am history buffing. I love history. I did it GCSE, did it A-level. Whenever I do a show that's set in a certain period, I get like really like intense about that period and stuff. I think it'd be really interesting, and I don't know how we find this out. Maybe if any of the listeners know or did this, but I wonder how many people have taken history GCSE because of Six.
Yeah.
Because being a nerd about history, what I find absolutely brilliant about Six is that everything in it is factually accurate. Everything they mention, all the references, yes, it's modernized and stuff, but all the facts are there. It's absolutely brilliant. And the one that always sticks out to me is the Anne of Cleves song, because she ended up being like the richest woman in England because she got divorced from Henry VIII, and she got given all this stuff because apparently he couldn't behead her because she wasn't a commoner or too noble to be beheaded, apparently. Yeah, she ended up getting the life of Riley, and that whole song about sitting here on the throne in a palace that I happen to own. It's amazing. So yeah, I'd be really interested to know how many people have got into history because of Six, because of Hamilton, because of a musical theatre influence, And
I think what we've seen a lot of imitations. This is what always happens when there's a flagship show like a Rent or a Hamilton, that once in a generation show. And we've seen a lot of kind of Hamilton, people trying to do that style on other historical subjects. And you can't, Hamilton is like I say, it's a once in a lifetime show. I think when Fatboy Slim did the Imelda Marcos musical.
Yes. Here Lies Love. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to find a unique way into that story, which he found in that. I think rather than everyone trying to do another Six, we've seen lots of Six imitations as well. But, it's like, that's why Jordan Luke Gage's Red Cliff is very interesting. It tells a true historical story. Would be a great one to take, your year 11s and 12s pastoral, to see gay history and people who were hanged for their sexuality.
Yeah.
I went home and I did a deep dive, Google on all these. And that's the thing. I love it when you come home from something and you do a deep dive Google on it.
It's fascinating. I think what I heard, I couldn't go and see the show, but Mike went along and he said apparently they found out about this story because of a tiny exhibit in a museum, and it caught their attention, and that's where Jordan got the idea from and investigated it, got newspapers out of the library and all this, and it's this sort of unknown, awful story of this gay love in Bristol. So yeah, excellent. Do you think any of those, this is leading on to my second question, Is there a forgotten musical out there that you feel needs to be revisited and brought back to our stages?
Without being really blunt and just saying no, like what I think is really interesting. I teach a class sometimes. I'd go and do like a guest lecture with drama schools and often with MAs in writing. And I do this exercise at the beginning of the class where I give everyone pieces of paper and I say, let's write down on the floor as many musicals as we can name. And you tend to get about 80 on the floor. Wow. And really the pool of musicals that we live in is so small. There really is like not very many in terms of like the amount of musicals that are written or films or books or whatever it may be. The number of musicals that make it to that status of like, you know, regularly revived, there's not many. That's why Oliver is still done. That's why, Wizard of Oz is always done. It's because these are household name A-list titles that it's in their bones. So for me, no, there's not something that leaps to mind. I think sometimes I'm often suspicious of the rarely revived musical because actually you go and see it and you realize there is a reason it's not often revived, because actually it might have one or two really good iconic songs, but actually there's a reason it's not done again. Yeah, revivals are an interesting one where I would always love to see new work. You know, Eliza Lumley said this on your podcast. I think that certainly in Christmas slots and things like that, you know, like we just did Treasure Island at Bristol Old Vic, you've kind of got a guaranteed audience in those slots, you know, if the local theatre is supported well by the community. And I just think where possible to give them a new, even if it's a new version of an old story, is preferable. Otherwise, we just won't have a pipeline of new shows. We need new musicals so that they can become the canonical thing in 60 years' time.
So here's my current up-to-date question for you. I think today or yesterday, it was announced regarding the time zone thing that the Jellicle Ball Cats is closing on Broadway.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're closing it, and the stuff I've seen online of it looks fantastic. It had amazing reviews, it won loads of awards, and yet they're having to close it. I think the economics of Broadway is really struggling, and I just wonder, how does that make you feel, like future wise and new writing wise? That must be really quite a scary prospect. Because, you know, last year when we launched the podcast, I was saying to loads of people, like we had Jerry Mitchell on and Tom Schumacher and things, and I was saying Broadway feels so exciting because they had all these new shows. They had Smash, they had Boop, they had Death Becomes Her, but like lots of incredibly exciting shows that once the Tonys opened, all closed.
Yeah.
Like Smash, Boop, they all went within weeks. How do you go about like reviving a whole community of musicals, not just one musical? How do we get that engine running again?
See, for me, I think the current answer I have is Bake Off is a brilliant example of this. We only ever went into the West End as a limited season between two announced plays at the Noel Coward Theatre. So there was never an opportunity we could have extended. We literally had, I think it was 11 and a half weeks. And everyone would say to me, like, is the show going to tour? It's perfect for touring, you know, and we've got like a dream cast of who would tour it, you know. And like I say, the amateur pipeline is the place where those shows live on. Drama schools, you know, people discovering. So Betty Boop, for example, I listened to that original cast recording a lot. So I think these shows will find their way back, like the original Merrily We Roll Along, and when Paul Kerrison revived that at Leicester Haymarket, and the fact that Merrily has come back as a resurgence of, as you know, the show that it is now,
huge, like the biggest Broadway hit for ages.
Yeah, and that's not to say that, you know, maybe that's Betty Boop or maybe that's Smash, whatever, but you know, these shows don't go away. And actually there will be some kid now who is 10 years old who saw Betty Boop on Broadway like we did when we saw shows that we've been talking about, and then when they are 40 and running a successful regional theatre in America, they might revive Boop. Musicals are never dead. You never know when that time is coming for them.
I think that's really interesting what you're saying. It's not actually about the centerpiece. It's about where that leads to. One of the things I did read about Broadway was that things aren't recouping on Broadway. They're closing. But then if they go on tour, that's where they're successful.
Shrek was famous for that example as well, where I think it did a year on Broadway, but there was a great front page variety piece that basically said Broadway is just the shop front for Shrek to have the life in secondary licensing, amateur licensing. I mean, look, it's been on UK tour here for years. You know, it's always going. Sometimes Broadway is just the launch. And that's where I think the model will move towards. Interestingly, we're now seeing on Broadway, they are moving towards a limited season model, which has never happened before. Broadway never doesn't do limited seasons. It's always like an open-ended run. Let's cross our fingers and hope for the best. Whereas if we've been doing limited seasons here for ages, you know, we're used to the limited season West End model here. And actually interesting, talking about revivals, that amazing Oklahoma a couple of years ago that was the Young Vic that had come from Broadway. Is there a question that actually if we do revivals like the Cats, the Jellicle Ball, I'm really excited to see radical interpretations rather than the sort of the slavish interpretation. And certainly Angela Webber's work is really, look at Evita by Jamie Lloyd, like he's having such a resurgence of new takes on that work. I think that can happen with, like I say, I joke about the Donmar Warehouse Wicked, but really it's a piece about two friends. Like I want to see the really tiny version of that uses intimacy. Like I say, that will happen for the shows as and when. You can't force it. I think it's just sometimes it's where the taste goes. It's like when Ivo Van Hove did West Side Story on Broadway. Again, it wasn't a huge success, but I think he gave it a go as like a kind of, okay, let's try and do a new West Side Story that is not the Jerome Robbins version. That I don't think it was necessarily that successful. I can't remember actually. I didn't see it, but
was that the bilingual one?
Yeah, it's the one. I think he used a lot of video work and a lot of screens. I'm sure it was Ivo Van Hove. Maybe I've got the director wrong. Again, I'm like, great that you've tried something new with it. That's more exciting to me than a sort of cut and paste revival.
I really hope we get to see the Jellicle Ball version of Cats.
I do, yeah. I would love to see it. We don't have it in our culture, though. That's the problem.
No.
Or like in our blood, in the way that it is in New Yorkers' blood. So I doubt we will, to be honest.
I have to quickly get on a plane before it closes.
Or we could do there might be a revisionist Cats here that, sets it at like a WI meeting or... I mean, look, Drew McConey's revival is about to open. Maybe time will tell. Maybe he's done that.
Rachel Wooding in a tweed set and pearls as Brisbella. That's what I'd like to see. Brilliant. Is there a musical out there, Jake, that helped you make a strong choice in your life? Or you went to see it and changed something about the way you live or made some decisions?
I mean, obviously Witches of Eastwick was the sort of the real inspiration behind like, okay, I think you should be a writer, and certainly the early work that was all like just taking that spirit that those songs were written in. But for me, I think actually there's a couple of shows over the last sort of, I suppose 15, I've been a professional writer now for I guess 16, 17 years since I met Pippa at university. Tick Tick Boom, obviously by Jonathan Larson, about being a writer. There's that song in it called Why. There's not very many of us in the musical theatre writing community. It's a small pool compared to like actors. But Why is about how much do you carry on, how much do you continue being a waiter, and and he talks literally in that song about his friend who has gone into the city and made loads of money, and you can choose that path. And I'm definitely seeing that out in my life in the real world of friends who aren't in the industry, who have got the houses with the gardens, and as we know in musical theatre, it's feast or famine, and it's all of that. And I think also A Strange Loop, I was so moved profoundly by A Strange Loop at the Barbican. I actually went to see it twice, which I don't like to see things twice because I've loved it, but I did go back and do it because I was actually doing a Q&A afterwards. That's why I went back to see it, because I was invited onto a panel to talk about it because I loved it so much. That is about Michael, the writer, was an usher on The Lion King on Broadway, and always wanted to write a musical, and he's put that story into the show. So I think they're niche. They're probably niche in the wider world. But for me as a writer, like I say, these things take a long time. I'm lucky that with Pippa we have each other. So I remember with Adrian Mole, when it was at Leicester Curve, it was supposed to transfer to the West End, then it didn't. Then it went to the Menier, then that was supposed to transfer to the West End, then it didn't, then it did. And you're talking like years of our lives where the two of us would be like curled up on Pippa's sofa, being like, "Oh, is this it? Like, is this ever going to happen for us?" And I still think that even with the projects that I'm writing, that I'm literally going to write after this podcast, I don't know if that's going to make it or not. So for me, I really like to see stories of resilience, and definitely A Strange Loop I just think is top of that genre, about staying true to your vision and not wavering from what you want and what you believe in. And for me, that is writing musical theatre. That is my passion. I will do it to the day I die.
I don't know much about A Strange Loop. It passed me by, so that has really, really sold it to me. There's a common thread there, isn't it? Like you say, they're musicals about writing and like staying true to what you want to do, and part of that becoming part of the work that you then see. So here's my random little question. Do you think there's a musical there of Jake and Pippa meeting Bristol? Maybe Bristol, exclamation mark. Here they are, and they're writing a musical. It's got to get to Edinburgh. How are we going to do this? Let's write a show. Let's put a Welsh character in it. What do you think?
Well, that's interesting, because there have been, Why Am I So Single was very much about sort of Toby and Lucy's friendship between the two of them, and it literally about their love lives. Why Am I So Single? And their sort of struggle to write their second show. It was very meta, very I loved that. I thought it was an incredible show. And actually, title of show is an off-Broadway musical musical that is about they have to put a show into a festival, but they don't have a title. They call it title of show. Pippa and I have definitely talked about, people think that Pippa and I, when we get together as double act, are hilarious and you two should be in a show together, you know. But we've done a couple of cabarets here and there. But no, I think that, like I say, when I look at A Strange Loop and I bow at the altar of that, I just think I can't top that. It's impressive. And I think it is niche. Like I say, there are so many novels about novelists trying to, you know, with writer's block, you know. I think I write to escape and to sort of, like, well, I say that, but I like imagining real people in real scenarios.
I wouldn't mind a revival of title of show, actually. And maybe, you know, obviously I need to see A Strange Loop now, so that needs to come back over here, please. Fabulous. My next question is, what do you think the secret is to a good music?
This is so easy for me to answer. It's humor. It's humor.
Humor, yes. Yeah.
You know, Les Mis and Miss Saigon are very serious musicals about very serious things. There is death in them, but they have got enduring comedy characters. You know, Madame Thénardier, the Thénardiers, Gavroche, and the engineer in Miss Saigon is the light. I mean, look, the engineer is not a nice character, but it is played as a stand-up comedic sort of, if you want to die in bed, and all, you know, that's a quote from the show in case anyone is wondering why I've just randomly thrown that in there. Those characters are the key to those shows, why those shows, you know, you couldn't just go and watch 3 hours of doom and gloom in Les Mis. You have to have that comedic stuff too. And I sit on a lot of panels. I sit on the panel for Beam, sometimes the Stiles and Drew Prize. You know, I go and do a lot of like guest mentoring for people, and I put my head in my hands and take a big deep breath when I've read the material in advance and go, how can I tell them you need more humanity here, you need more heart, more humor? My very first job out of leaving university was with, I assisted on the original West End production as a director to Tim Firth on Calendar Girls, the play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I wanted to be a director. That's sort of where I started my career, was I assisted Matthew Watchers, actually your current boss on Pride. I assisted him on Death Trap in a revival that was with Jonathan Groff and Simon Russell Beale. And Tim Firth's mantra, he talked about what's called a treacle cutter. And this is a phrase that he uses, which is when you've got something syrupy. You talked about sentimentality earlier. A treacly line like, oh, Caroline, I love you so much. You undercut the treacle with a joke. Yes. And that is Tim Firth's writing. And that's Kay Mellor's writing. And that's all these greats. Alan Bennett, you know, just at the moment you think it's getting a little schmaltzy, you treacle cut it. I think. And so I've learned that phrase, you know, it's my first job out of uni. And, you know, Tim Firth is a career idol of mine. Yeah, you've got to have humor. And I think that, you know, and Matthew Watchers knows that, you know, Matthew does some serious work, but there's always Groundhog Day, hugely funny.
Oh, one of the funniest plays I've ever seen was directed by Matthew, and it was, I don't know if you saw Boeing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
I actually thought I was going to pass out from laughing so much. I'm fascinated though about this director side of you. So tell us, let's go on for a tangent. Where did, you know, you started out kind of performing, writing your pantomimes. What is your journey? Where did the writing then become what you did rather than the directing? And
it was literally around that period. So when I left university, I moved to London because I wanted to be a director. That was why I applied to Bristol University, because I wanted to be Matthew Watchers. He was like, again, the person that I looked up to the most.
That's where he went, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was him, like David Nichols, who wrote the book One Day, Matt Lucas and David Williams, Laura Wade, lots of big writers and comedians and directors had done the course at Bristol, which is why I chose it. And I really wanted to be a director. And like I say, I assisted on, I think I did, and then I came in associate on a play, Barking in Essex, with Sheila Hancock and Keely Hawes and Lee Evans. And then I think I got offered a really big job, actually it was a big assisting job to Matthew. And I decided my writing with Pippa was taking off. We just got Adrian Mole. I was like 24.
So you were still doing that as well?
Yeah, and I was still doing the Edinburgh shows. We had a couple of shows. We had the shows at German Street and Theatre 503, and I think I was writing foreplay at that time, my first play as well. It was going to be a big job with Matthew, which is very touching that he thought of me for it. But that was the moment I knew I wanted to pursue writing instead.
You had to make a choice.
Yeah, because I've come full circle with it recently. I dramaturg occasionally for an amazing writer called Anthony McCartan, who wrote the Neil Diamond musical on Broadway, and he wrote the film Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen movie. It's a long story about how we got involved. So I'm now his sort of, every time he's writing a stage musical, he always calls me and I go and dramaturg his shows for him. And a couple of years ago, he asked, we were doing the dramaturg sessions, and he said, Jake, he's like, you really speak like a director. He was like, do you want to direct a workshop of this show that I'd only been brought in? And so I did. I directed this whole workshop that had the most incredible West End cast. I did 3 workshops, and then it was getting towards production, and Anthony kept pushing. He was like, Jake's going to direct this. And eventually there were some really serious heavyweights involved in the show, because Anthony is a 4-time Oscar nominee. And then I think eventually the call came that was like, oh, Jake, you don't really have any directing on your CV. Like you can't helm this massive show. It's definitely an itch that I will scratch it one day for sure. But writing is directing, you know, the stage directions, it's all in there. I get the pleasure of being able to write direction to my scripts and not having to think about actually having to make it happen or having to like,
have to deal with people.
yeah. And also there is so much diplomacy in what we do of like, having to gently give an actor a note when you just want to like, the old fashioned Broadway way of like, stand there, Caroline, say it louder.
I have had that a few times.
Yeah, of course. I remember Rosie Ash's audition for Adrian Mole. She came in and she did the speech and Luke Shepherd sort of started to sort of give her notes and she went, do you just mean louder? And he was like, yeah. She's like, I can do it louder. This is Rosie Ash. Of course she can do it louder.
Of course she can.
And I think that's the thing. I think some actors like that. But yeah, I just think, and I would love to do it. I definitely will. I really want to do it. If there's anyone out there listening, I would love to direct something. At university, I directed loads of small scale plays, sort of 3, 4, 5-handers. That's the thing that interests me the most is just human psychology and just the relationships between people. I think staging musicals is hard. I think it is like an art form in itself, which is why I'm so glad Luke has finally won his Olivier Award because he's been doing that for so many years. To know how to stage a musical and where your eye should go. Again, Matthew Warchus is top of the class in that. I just saw you in Pride and he's an amazing stager of moving 30 people around on a stage and making it look elegant.
Focusing it and the focus that he wants and the clarity is paramount. And that is something that is all being drilled into us at the minute. But I do love what you say about the humour and like you say with Pride and that treacle cutter, a lot of people are coming to it and saying that ending the show in floods of tears, but having had a really good laugh at the same time. And that's one of the best things, isn't it? When you actually experience the whole gamut of emotions. That's the human experience there in a 3-hour slot. You have gone through everything and you come out having remembered what it is to be human. That was something that I was taught in college when we had to do this session every week called dramatic theory. And one of the things we learned was like how much everything you put on stage has to hold the mirror up to the human experience, and that is it, isn't it? Humor is how we get through how difficult it is to be a human. So yeah, absolutely essential. And that's a unique answer.
Good.
That hasn't been mentioned at this one. It's usually like, it's the book. And now we have a book right away. It's humor. So which musical out there feeds your soul? This is our last question.
It's so interesting of everything we've talked about. I didn't realize this until we've talked about it, but there is obviously a running theme of me looking to art to solve the artist in me. And the musical that feeds my soul the most is A Chorus Line.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, which again is not really regularly done, but I'm going to be so specific about this. I'm talking about that original, the one that came back to the Palladium. That is the original staging of that original. And it's interesting that is the gold standard of that. And I'm so glad that I got to see that original and it didn't feel like a museum piece. I think that, in everything we do, like I say, it's like the Sondheim lyric from I'm Still Here, sometimes was it plush velvet, sometimes just pretzels and beer, but I'm here. Actually, Damien Humbly, this is a good anecdote. Damien Humbly, amazing actor. I was going through a really tough time. I don't know, during Bake Off, I was like, you doubt yourself. And I was like, it takes years to get to the stage and then you get a barrage of criticism and then you get this. And Damien said, he's like, you have to think of your career being like a stocks and shares graph. Like it goes up and you have a peak and then it goes down and it goes really down when you're unemployed and you're not working for 6 months and the bills are coming in, and then you might do a workshop that feeds your soul. And he's like, if you look and zoom out, you've got a heartbeat that's still going. That's your heartbeat going through the industry.
Well done, Damien Humbly. That's really beautiful.
I know. Honestly, I think about that. And again, I teach that when I'm talking to students or mentoring. I always talk about Damien's little stocks and shares graph because it's true. You know what it's like. We all know what those down things are like. Or like I say, you have the high, you write a show, it comes out, and then you are open, especially with social media now. I love reading everything. I'm one of those nosy people. I like to read every review. And yeah, it does get you down occasionally and whatever. But seeing things like A Chorus Line, which are about what it means to be an artist and what it means to stay in it and what it means to, What I Did for Love is what the song of that show goes. And that it's saying every single one of that chorus line could do it. We all could do it, but only some get to succeed. And I think that is musical theatre particularly is an art form whereby I think of it like a roulette wheel. The roulette wheel is spinning and you throw in your ball, which is Caroline Sheen, you throw it and you might land in Broadway and you might land in, the West End, or you might not. Or your ball might throw out of the thing and you go and do something completely different for years. Then you might come back to it later in life. You know this. You've been in hits. You've been in flops. Merrily is the example. How can you say that a show that closed after 13 performances, deemed a huge Broadway flop, is now one of the best, most revered shows shows of all time.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Sondheim walked around that for 40 years with that on his shoulders?
Yeah.
A masterpiece that just wasn't recognized in its time. And that's not to say, of course, that everything is a forgotten masterpiece, but that's why it's lovely to be in the community of people whereby we can all share our ups and downs. You know, we all know what it feels to miss out on the jobs. And also the highs are hard too. You know, the highs are also, you know, because I think of like some of the stuff we talked about, like Jet Set Go, our very first show, so has some of mine and Pippa's best work in. And you go, well, was that beginner's luck because we were 20 when we wrote it? Or like everyone worries about never working again, don't they? You know, every time you finish a job, it's like, are you ever going to get hired again?
I don't know if you listened to Stephen Schwartz's episode.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And he was really open about how, you know, difficult it was. He had 3 huge hits by the age of 26. And then everything sort of plateaued and things weren't working and people weren't enjoying his work anymore. And he then at one point went to retrain. He moved out of New York and, you know, he's like going to change his life. And
then he wrote Wicked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
you know, so that's the thing. I always say now that I love table reads and I love workshops as much as I love full productions. We had a workshop of something about 3 years ago. And I remember at the time thinking, there is every chance that this show might never be done again. I'm just going to enjoy this workshop for the pleasure of putting this together. And I think that rather than cynically being like, I'm going to take this job and I'm going to earn lots of money from this if I write it like this, I've given up on that long ago. The only way you can get through this career is to enjoy what you're doing. If you're lucky enough to be able to, you know, turn stuff down, if you go, God, I really don't want to do that. You know, it's like when you go to an audition, I go to a meeting with a producer and you get like a sort of sixth sense that, oh, I don't think this is someone I want to work with or be on a journey with, because these things take so long. But I think, you have to learn to love the process as much as you have to learn to love the good bits. It's not just the applause, it's the whole lifetime of work in between that. And I think those periods of being out of work are actually, when I look back at them nostalgically, that's where the best ideas come.
Yeah.
As artists, we are forced to adapt or thrive or to survive. And so as much as I dread the empty diary sometimes, that's the point where I pick up the phone to people I wouldn't pick up the phone to if I was really busy. And you might go for a coffee with someone that changes the whole course. Like that's how I met Kate Gollidge, who obviously went on to direct our Singapore shows years ago. You know, we were Twitter friends and I said, oh, we should probably meet. It's a lovely community when it's lovely and it's a hard community when it's hard. It's the full range of being alive, isn't it? I guess that's why we do it.
That's why there's a really good song about it.
And to finish the show, Caroline will lead us in a rendition.
Luke actually said something really interesting, and it's something I never really thought of, because I guess as an actor, this doesn't really cross your mind, not to the extent that I guess it would cross a creative's mind, because when an actor takes a job, it's for a certain period of time, and then you move on to another job, and all those people that you worked with on that job, you'll take a couple of them with you as friends, and then you move on. Whereas for a creative to take on a job, like a director or a writer or a composer and a producer, that job for them could have a huge amount, will have a huge amount of longevity if you're lucky. So when you go into something, you really have to be with people that you find inspirational and exciting, because that is a much, much longer journey for a creative than it is for a cast member.
And also the shows live with you really forever. Like even Jet Set Go, which again was probably 18 years ago. Somebody did just do it about 6 months ago in Manchester, like a little amateur company who I think had gone down a YouTube hole. And I think they knew Bake Off and found it and did it.
Yeah.
And even Play for Play that I wrote literally, I think 12 years ago, nobody did it for 10 years. And then it was revived last year at the King's Head Theatre. And I'm getting no end. I got a royalty check the other day from book sales of the book that I hadn't had in 10 years, you know.
Wow.
It's currently running in Mexico. It's just been on in Melbourne. It's going to Rio de Janeiro next year. And again, that's just from a revival of it. When Pippa and I write, we will always call back to earlier things in shows. So it's living with you all the time. You know, that little thing we did in Adrian Mole, let's do it like using the same technique for something else that we're doing.
Yeah, let's revisit that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Jake, is there anything coming up that you can tell us about? What are you doing after the podcast? What are you writing?
No, annoyingly, because when I listen to your podcast, I find this section really funny when people are tiptoeing around the things that they can't talk about.
Did you hear Maria's? We just had to bleep loads of Maria's out because she told us everything.
I loved that. I thought that was so funny. I'm doing a lot of big IP at the moment, which is really, obviously because of Bake Off and Adrian Mole, like, Pippa and I are doing some really nice stuff. We're doing a new musical that Michael Longhurst is going to direct. I think that's okay to say. That's the one I was talked about the workshop a few years back. It's a completely original IP-less piece. It's an original story. So yeah, we've just had our first sit down with Mike about a month ago to go through the script. So yes, we're now moving forward with venue conversations and act conversations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool because Mike Longhurst is cool. Like,
yeah, he's very cool.
Pippa and I are not cool. He's cool. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm doing a show for Melting Pot, which is Simon Friend's company who did Life of Pi. I'm writing it with, well, it's hard to say without giving it away, but basically with someone very culturally cool right now is all I can say.
Oh, okay. It's all about being cool now. I feel like I'm going to be cool just from having interviewed you now.
No. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Pippa and I are also starting a huge, huge show for, actually, ironically, the producers of Inspector Calls, PW Productions. When I say that is so early stages, it's an enormous global thing. I can't wait. If I give it away, I will give it away. That will take years. Like, I feel like I will be on Talk Musicals to Me in 2095.
Her new baby will be at university.
Yeah, literally. Like you joke. I think, but the good thing is like, I love everything that I'm working on. Like I say, the TV and film stuff is often mad. And, again, I get called in now, I think, because of Adrian Bake Off. I think people do come to me. I'm in a really nice point now.
You have a calling card now, don't you?
Yeah, and same with Foreplay. Foreplay, like I say, that revival last year that's actually what Nicholas Heitner called me in for. He said, I read Foreplay before I got this job with him. He was like, I just loved your dialogue. He was like, you can write theatre dialogue and I need that for this piece. And I was like,
thank you very much.
That's the best compliment you could ever get in your life. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about what's coming up.
I'm so excited for you. I wish we could talk about all this for like another podcast, but I have to say thank you very much for coming on, and best of luck with everything you've got going on. And
hopefully it will star you and your husband. Finally, yes. Then it will all come full circle in the end.
Thank you so much for listening today. This has been Talk Musicals to Me for the Bloop Network. My fabulous producer is Aaron Ware, and the music you heard is from the pen of the sublime Tom Self. If you get a moment, please subscribe or follow and rate the podcast by clicking the stars below on the podcast page. It takes about 2 seconds to do, and it will really help the podcast and its future life, and would make us massively, eternally, enormously grateful. In the meantime, another huge thanks for tuning in, and please do so again next time to see who will be next up to Talk Musicals to Me.